Today I'm going to show you how we bring a legendary sword into the real world. To celebrate the new expansion of Guild Wars 2 Visions of Eternity, we built the one and only Sohothin. For those of you who are not familiar with the game, Guild Wars 2 is a free-to-play MMORPG set in a rich fantasy world. It's known for its action-packed combat and has a dynamic living world story that changes with player actions. We are also celebrating the release of Guild Wars Reforged, which is an updated version of the original game. If that sounds good to you, make sure to check it out. But first let me show you how we brought the legendary Sohothin into the real world. What was special about this project was that we were kind of free with the design. There are several different versions of the legendary sword Sohothin. We have the in-game model, official artworks, and also a few shots from the cinematic. We personally like the design of the artwork the most, which is also used in the logo for Guild Wars Reforged. So it was Ralph's turn to turn the 2D artwork into a 3D render. The tricky part here was that we only had this one picture and didn't know how the sword looks from other angles. But this also gave us quite a bit of freedom with the design. We also took some design elements from the in-game model that we thought would enhance the design, like the nose and the prominent spikes on the jaw. We were not sure about the length of the flame that comes out of the mouth, so we first stuck to the length of the original artwork. A good way to see if the sizing looks right in real life is to print it on paper. We also made a second version with a longer flame and the proportions looked way better, so the design part was done. Of course we wanted to add LEDs and also a small smoke machine. But the space we had to hide all the electronics and the smoke machine was very limited. I did some research to find the smallest possible smoke machine, and luckily a friend of mine had quite some experience with smoke machines and sent me this one. It looked very promising and it even had a remote. From time to time you have to refill the smoke fluid, so we had to figure out a way to make the smoke machine removable. Of course Ralph came up with an idea for that. So later we will be able to remove the handle and reach the smoke machine. This little cylinder not only contains the smoke machine, there's even enough space for the battery. Once it's assembled, it slides perfectly into the handle. And with the remote I can turn the smoke on and off. This is so cool. Now that everything was perfectly planned, we could finally start 3D printing the final pieces. Although we have quite a big resin printer, we still had to cut off the dragon's horns and print them separately. But I'm a master at sanding and filling gaps on 3D prints, so that was okay for me. Next up, we also printed the big dragon head and it turned out great. Prints like this take over 24 hours and sometimes something goes wrong during the last hours, which really sucks. So it's always super satisfying when there are no issues with big prints. Before I could continue sanding this beauty, all the support material needed to be removed and it baked for a while in the UV chamber to cure the resin. After all parts were fully cured, it was time for the part I don't enjoy that much. But at the same time, it can also be very relaxing. While sanding, I can turn off my brain and enjoy listening to a good gaming soundtrack or an audiobook. The whole cleanup process for a piece like this can take a while. And it's not only sanding, it's also gluing parts together and patching seams. In this case, I had to make sure the horns blended seamlessly into the head. But yeah, mostly it's just a lot of sanding. After sanding comes spray filler and more sanding, until all parts are super smooth and ready for paint. The best base color for gold is gloss black. I like to mix my own gold color to get it as close to the reference as possible. Next I applied several thin coats with my airbrush until I got an even finish. It's important to work in thin layers to prevent dripping. The more layers you apply, the richer the gold becomes. I needed a very bright and saturated gold, so I applied about 5 coats. Sohothin is a legendary weapon and it was used in quite a few battles, so it needed some weathering. The black paint also helps to bring out the details. I'm obsessed with the scale design on the handle, it looks so pretty with the gold. The eyes were printed with translucent PLA. I slightly painted them and gave them a gloss finish. I added them to the dragon head and that meant the head and the handle were finally done. Even though it seemed like a big part of the project was already done, we still had to tackle the tricky part, the fire-shaped blade. We came up with the idea to add a channel inside the blade where we could place the LEDs, so we chose a translucent PLA. We tested different infill settings to see which would diffuse the light best. And it turned out that 10% looked the best. For printing, we separated the blade at its breakpoints, hoping this would be the best way to hide the seam lines where the pieces were glued together. For even better light diffusion, I buffed the surface with sandpaper. While I was busy sanding, Ralph worked on the LED circuit. For that you need a microcontroller, a voltage converter, and of course the LEDs. We used a strip with 144 LEDs per meter. All components were soldered together. Here Ralph was also adding a very small switch to turn the LEDs on and off. All parts were attached to this 3D printed plate, which was designed to fit perfectly into the handle. Next, the LEDs were connected to the microcontroller and voltage converter. Now that the final LED circuit was done, we could add it to the blade pieces. Due to the special shape, we had to install the LEDs before gluing everything together. For gluing, we used UV curing resin. It's clear and cures instantly under UV light. This is such a cool and unique blade shape, so next I had to paint it. I airbrushed the entire blade with bright yellow and orange colors to mimic the look of fire. I used translucent airbrush paints, but you still have to be careful not to apply too much. Right where the blade comes out of the dragon's mouth, it looks like glowing lava, so I masked the veins with liquid latex. In general, liquid latex is great for masking. Every time I use it, I'm like, why don't I use this more often? I don't know why, but I always tend to use tape instead. Once everything was fully dry, I painted the area with opaque black and faded it out towards the ends of the veins. Then I peeled off the latex and it looked so cool. I was so happy this worked out so well, and it will look even cooler once the LEDs are turned on. I blended the veins with more black and then the blade was done as well. Now it was finally time to assemble everything. I added the blade, this is the smoke machine and the battery. Here we have the microcontroller and the voltage converter, and these are the LEDs for the eyes. We added magnets to make sure the handle doesn't come off too easily, and then we were finally done. Every prop we build is basically a prototype, and the short time schedule doesn't allow us to redo things. So every step has to be well thought out before we implement it. But even though we had an extremely tight time schedule, we of course somehow managed it and are extremely proud how it turned out. Make sure to check out Guild Wars 2 Visions of Eternity and get your own legendary weapon. And now let me show you Sohothin, the legendary blade of fire and war.